Every year, college players are selected, and their childhood dreams of becoming an NFL player become a reality. Some of these players go on to become franchise cornerstones, while others can set a franchise back for a few years because of their poor performance on the field. With all of the drafts completed from the 2010s, we will now be going back in time and naming the biggest draft bust from each class. Before we get started though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The 2010 draft first round was highlighted by the 2008 Heisman winner Sam Bradford, a defensive lineman who was the best defense prospect in years in Ndamukong Suh, and several other all-pro players including but not limited to Gerald McCoy, Trent Williams, Eric Berry, and Joe Hayden. However, for all of these players that made it and became very good players, there were busts in this class that simply did not pan out. While Sam Bradford never became the player the Rams wanted him to be, he is far from a bust, as he threw for over 100 touchdown passes and briefly set the single-season record for completion percentage with the Minnesota Vikings in 2016. Instead, the biggest bust from this class came with the 25th overall pick when the Denver Broncos selected Tim Tebow to be their franchise quarterback. Tebow played just 2 seasons for the Broncos before they traded him to the Jets for him to only back up Mark Sanchez. Tebow in his time with the Broncos completed less than 50% of his passes and threw for only 17 touchdowns in 14 career starts. The 2011 draft class was the best in the 2010s without a doubt, as it consisted of Cam Newton, who despite his struggles in 2019 is still a former MVP, Von Miller, a former Super Bowl MVP, AJ Green, Julio Jones, Patrick Peterson, and JJ Watt, not to mention later round guys like Justin Houston and Richard Sherman. However, for all the studs in this class, there were some pretty big draft busts, and there were 3 other quarterbacks taken in the top 12 picks aside from Cam, and none of them panned out. They were Jake Locker, who the Titans took at 8th overall, Blaine Gabbert, who the Jags took at 10th overall, and Christian Ponder, who the Vikings took at 12th overall. While Gabbert didn't work out for the Jags, he is still in the league, as he played for the Bucs in 2019, so he at minimum is a journeyman quarterback and has found a place in the NFL. Locker and Ponder are without a doubt the 2 biggest busts in this class, but I would say Locker was worse than Ponder because he only played in 30 career games and won just 9 as a starter. As bad as Ponder was, he was the starting quarterback in 2012 when the Vikings won 10 games and made a postseason appearance. Jake Locker is the biggest bust from the 2011 draft class. The 2012 draft class was highlighted by the quarterbacks that were taken 1-2, and Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III. Another quarterback was drafted in the 3rd round named Russell Wilson, who went on to become a pretty good player in his own right. This class had some big names like Luke Kuechly, Stephon Gilmore, Fletcher Cox, and Chandler Jones, but the biggest bust from this class came when the Browns selected Trent Richardson at 3rd overall. Trent had a decent rookie season as he rushed for 950 yards and 11 touchdowns, and then after 2 games into his 2nd year, he was traded for a first-round pick to the Indianapolis Colts. In Trent's 20 career games with the Colts, he averaged an abysmal 3.1 yards per carry and rushed for just 977 yards and 6 touchdowns. Trent had some competition for this though, as the Jags took Justin Blackmon with the 5th overall pick, and although he is still technically on the Jags roster as a reserved player, I highly doubt he ever plays again, and he finishes his career with just 93 receptions and 6 touchdowns. Next up is the 2013 draft, and this class was abysmal as a whole aside from a few outliers like Eric Fisher, Lane Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, and Zach Ertz. The first round had a lot of draft busts, and ultimately I'm going to state a few and not pick just one. Luke Joeckel was supposed to be a cornerstone for the Jags at number 2 overall, and he is now out of the league after playing in just 50 career games. Deion Jordan, the 3rd overall pick, is still in the league, and for a pass rusher who was supposed to be the Dolphins' franchise defensive end alongside Cameron Wake, he simply was not and has 10.5 career sacks. Barkevious Mingo, the 6th overall pick, played just 3 years in Cleveland and is currently a Houston Texan, and he has just 10 career sacks. Jonathan Cooper, the 7th overall pick, played in just 46 career games and made just 31 starts at guard. And the final player I will discuss from this class is 9th overall pick corner D. Milner. D played just 4 years for the Jets and recorded just 63 tackles and 3 career interceptions. There's a lot of candidates for the biggest bust from this class, as you can see, and I couldn't list just one without bringing up 4 or 5. The 2014 draft class was highlighted by big-name players like Jadeveon Clowney and Khalil Mack. There were a lot of great players in this class, like Mike Evans, Anthony Barr, Odell Beckham, and Aaron Donald, to name a few. There were also a few quarterbacks taken in the first round, in Blake Bortles, Teddy Bridgewater, and Johnny Manziel, who were all supposed to turn their franchises around. Blake and Teddy each were the quarterbacks on their team's postseason runs at a point in time, while Johnny played just 2 years for the Browns and threw 7 career touchdown passes. He is the biggest bust of the 2014 draft class. He finished with a record of 2-6 as a starter and is not only the biggest bust in this class, but one of the biggest in NFL history. Another monumental draft bust was when the Browns selected Justin Gilbert 8th overall, who played just 2 seasons before they traded him with the Steelers for a future 6th round pick. What makes the Gilbert pick look especially bad is picks 5 through 7, the 3 before him, and picks 9 through 17 were all Pro Bowlers at some point in their career, and he, to say the least, was not. The 2015 draft was pretty average in terms of a draft class, highlighted by the first 2 quarterbacks being taken in Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. The class is more so highlighted by picks in rounds 2 through 7, such as Landon Collins, Danielle Hunter, David Johnson, and Stephon Diggs. However, the biggest draft bust, and I really hate to say it because it was out of his control, and that's sometimes the unfortunate reality of the NFL, is injury, but the biggest draft bust was Bears wide receiver Kevin White. Kevin was taken at 7th overall and played in just 14 career games, and at only 27, he could get another look from somebody as a camp body or to see how he would do in the preseason, but with his injury history, it's a big risk to do that in itself. His career stats as of now are 25 catches for 285 yards and 0 touchdowns. The 2016 draft was highlighted by the first 2 picks being quarterbacks in Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. There were also some great skill position players in this class, like Ezekiel Elliott, Jalen Ramsey, and Michael Thomas. There were several draft busts in this class, including one by my favorite team when the Minnesota Vikings selected Laquan Treadwell at 23rd overall. Other busts from this class include, but are not limited to, Robert Nkemdiche, Vernon Hargreaves, and Corey Coleman. However, none of these compared to a quarterback the Broncos took at pick 26 in Paxton Lynch. Paxton played just 2 years for the Broncos before being released and before making a quick pit stop in Seattle and being on the Steelers' active roster due to several injuries. Paxton has, as a former first-round pick, 4 career touchdown passes to 4 career interceptions, and this is one of many quarterbacks Broncos general manager John Elway has not picked right. Next up, and this is the final class that I'll do in depth, is the 2017 draft class, and this honestly isn't as easy as saying Mitch Trubisky and leaving it at that. Mitch obviously hasn't been able to accomplish what Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson have, but the reality is Mitch has a career record of 23-18 and hasn't been as bad as former first-round quarterbacks like Johnny Manziel or Paxton Lynch. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback by any means, but to call him the biggest draft bust in a class where players like Solomon Thomas, Corey Davis, and John Ross exist simply isn't fair to Mitch. I would personally say Solomon Thomas is the biggest bust in this class based on production of where he was picked, as through 3 years of his career, Solomon has just 6 sacks and hasn't been a game changer the way 3rd overall picks should be. The 49ers have had a great 2019 season due to Nick Bosa, DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, and their offensive running game, and not Solomon Thomas. The unfortunate part for Mitch and Bears fans at all is the constant Mahomes and Watson comparison. Now looking at the 2018 draft, and it's not really fair to go and make assumption 2 years into a career, but we're going to do it anyway, and the biggest bust so far is Josh Rosen. He was dealt 2 terrible hands in Arizona and Miami, but his completion percentage through 2 years is under 55%, and he has more interceptions than he does touchdowns. Baker Mayfield had a sophomore slump, but he is nowhere as bad as Rosen has been through 2 go-arounds. The 2019 class certainly isn't fair to say yet, but if I had to say which pick so far is the biggest bust, it would be, and it's only through 1 season, and he's just 22 years old, so he can change this, but Quinnen Williams of the Jets. He played in only 13 games and played in 75% or more of the snaps just once in a 25-point loss to the Eagles, and finished his rookie campaign with just 28 tackles and 2.5 sacks. Anyway, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Again, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Skol Vikes.